All right, so I have to give an honest take on the Van Jefferson section, which was the Rams' second pick in the second round. Which, by the way, I was a huge fan of the first pick they made in the second round, taking Cam Akers. I already had another video where I talked about that. But as far as the Van Jefferson pick, I mean, look, I got to be brutally honest with you guys. We're talking about a receiver that played 4 years in college. So he stayed for his senior year, okay? And he never had more than he never even cracked 700 yards receiving. Never even cracked, never mind 1,000 yards. He never cracked 700 yards in a college season in receiving. Wasn't much of a contributor on special teams, so there's really no dynamic factor there. He also played at 2 different schools. He played at Ole Miss and then eventually transferred to Florida, thinking that, he would have a better shot at establishing his dominance at a different school, but it just never happened for him at the college level. And he ended up finishing his college career. First season at Ole Miss, he had 3 receiving touchdowns. The second season at Ole Miss, he only had 1 receiving touchdown. And he had 6 receiving touchdowns both times he was at Florida, both his final 2 years at Florida. But again, never exceeding – his highest receiving yards was from his senior season where he had 657 receiving yards. So again, we're talking about 4 seasons in college. You didn't even crack 700 yards receiving in any of your seasons. So it's not looking good from a productivity standpoint or an efficiency standpoint. It's also not looking good from a breakout age standpoint. Because he was a late bloomer in college. He didn't really break out until he was like 22 years old. I mean, so you ask yourself, well, why did the Rams make this pick? I think it had to do with, those that are big on film analysis will say he has soft hands, he has good route running. But I mean, again, if you're not efficient or productive in college, if you are going to be 24 years old by the time the season starts, there's already a lot going against you just off of those facts. Now, the one thing I will say in Van Jefferson's favor is that he does have the lineage. His father was a NFL receiver who played a 13-year pro career and is now coaching. So that's Sean Jefferson. He was, again, an NFL wide receiver, played for 13 years. That's the one thing that gives me hope with Van Jefferson is the fact that his father, he has that lineage where his father played in the NFL and had a nice career that lasted 13 years. That encourages me. But the fact that he didn't do much of anything in college to really command being drafted in the second round, that's what scares me. What scares me is he wasn't enough of a producer. Now I get it. I mean, when he was at Ole Miss, he had other players around him like AJ Brown, who we know is a stud, who just went off in his rookie year for the Titans. He had to compete for targets with AJ Brown. He had to compete with targets for DK Metcalf, and he had to compete with targets for Evan Ingram. So we get that, okay? Maybe that's why when he was at Ole Miss, he wasn't really doing much because he had such phenomenal players around him that he had to compete with for targets. But then you have to ask yourself, well, he went to Florida and he still didn't crack 700 yards. What's that about? So I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to really get behind this pick and feel good about it, especially since it was a second rounder. I mean, it'd be one thing if we took a flyer on this guy in like the 4th, 5th round or whatever, but that's just not the case. We took this guy relatively early. So ultimately, I hate to say it, but I think a lot is going to have to go right for Van Jefferson to have a great career in the NFL. And a lot's going to have to go wrong for the players that he's competing with for targets. So again, the one glimmer of hope is the family lineage and to a somewhat lesser degree, what scouts are saying about his hands and his route running. But I mean, ultimately, if you didn't produce in college, you already have a tough road to climb to show that you're, going to be able to achieve the next level, because it only gets more difficult. It's not going to get easier to put up receiving yards. You go to the NFL, it's going to get more difficult. So that's what I have to say on this. Again, I liked what the Rams did with the Cam Akers pick. I thought that was a great pick. This one, I definitely don't feel as good about at all. But we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see how he fits in with the rest of the receiving core. I mean, with Cooper Kupp, Josh Reynolds, Brandon Cook's gone. Still got Robert Woods. So I guess the idea is we're going to hope that Jefferson can line up on the outside opposite Robert Woods, while Cooper Kupp and Josh Reynolds remain the slot receivers. But I don't know if Van Jefferson has what it takes to be a number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. I'm not convinced up to this point. But I'll hope for the best, and we'll see what happens.